Been nearly 12 years since a critical moment in the Obama administration when U.S. Special Forces raided and killed America's most wanted terrorist, Osama bin Laden. Now we're getting a truly extraordinary look behind the scenes over at the White House Situation Room as that daring mission was actually underway. Brian Todd has been going over all the photographs that were just released. Brian, these candid photos are so revealing and so compelling.
Wolf, there was really nothing about that day at the White House that was not dramatic. In these newly released photographs, the faces really tell the story. A never-before-seen image depicting the intensity and drama during the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Then President Obama and Vice President Biden in the White House Situation Room, tension visible on their faces, pressing Defense Secretary Bob Gates. One of several newly published pictures from inside the White House on that momentous day, May 1st, 2011.
They all knew, look, if this thing goes wrong, Al-Qaeda fights back, special operations people are captured or killed, bin Laden isn't there, the Pakistani military gets involved, there are a lot of things that could go wrong.
These pictures, just obtained by the Washington Post from the Obama Presidential Library from a Freedom of Information Act request. Previously, this was the image the public knew best from that day. Obama, along with Biden, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and other top aides, watching the bin Laden raid in real time. Clinton's hand over her mouth. CNN national security analyst Peter Bergen believes this was around the time the Navy SEALs helicopter clipped a wall and was damaged in a hard landing. Bergen interviewed President Obama and all the key players in the room for the CNN documentary We Got Him.
It's here where we observed, for example, that one of the helicopters got damaged in the landing.
And what were you thinking?
I was thinking that this is not an ideal start.
I mean, your heart was in your throat the whole time you were in there. I've never spent a more stressful 30-plus minutes in my life.
The newly released pictures show Obama watching intently, asking questions. When word came that the raid was successful, Obama is photographed shaking hands with Gates. Other photos depict the president making calls to give the news to former presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and calls to other world leaders. Other images show the president and his team working on the speech he would give to the nation late that night, as they could hear a crowd gathering outside the White House. In one of the newly released photos, Biden and then Joint Chiefs Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen show White House photographer Pete Souza the rosary beads they'd had wrapped around their fingers during the bin Laden raid. What sense did they give you of just the relief afterward?
I'll tell you what a lot of people said. They said that they only really realized what a big deal this was when they left the White House. Suddenly they hear these cheers, and that's when people said, some people said I started crying.
USA! USA! USA!
Now, on those phone calls that President Obama made to tell other world leaders about the bin Laden raid, according to Obama's memoir, when he told then Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari about it, Zardari's reply was, quote, "Whatever the fallout, it's very good news," end quote. That despite the public backlash from the Pakistani government at the time expressing serious displeasure with the raid. Wolf?
Interesting. Brian Todd reporting for us. Thank you. Joining us now, the former chief White House photographer who took so many of those truly extraordinary pictures, Pete Souza. Pete, thanks so much for joining us. What was it like capturing the tension leading up to this very high-stakes operation and the moment leaders in that room actually learned that the mission was a success?
Well, Wolf, every day for 8 years, I documented everything the president did. And this was, I went about my business the same way that day. But obviously, I knew that this would be a historic day. And as was pointed out in that report, a lot of things could have gone wrong. And fortunately, they didn't. But I think because of that, there was a lot of tension in that room, especially during those 40 minutes they were in the room adjacent to the big Situation Room, actually watching the raid as it took place. And when the reaction was so subtle when I think it was Admiral Bill McRaven who over the audio said that Geronimo KIA, meaning Geronimo was bin Laden and killed in action for KIA, the reaction was very muted in so many ways that I wasn't even fully aware of what had just been said.
Interesting. What can you tell us, Pete, about these photos that we can't see?
I mean, I think I appreciated the way I didn't see the photos before they were published in the Washington Post. I knew they were going to be published. The Post had given me an alert, but I didn't know which photographs they would choose to publish. The one thing that I thought they did a good job at was putting them in the proper chronological order, because the raid itself only lasted for 10 minutes, but there were meetings both before the raid and after the raid, spanning 10, 11 hours throughout that day. And I thought the way they presented the photographs in the chronological order, gave the proper insight to what that day was like for the leaders at the White House.
More than a decade later, how important is it, Pete, for Americans to see these photos, clearly an inside look at a truly historic moment?
I don't know. I think that's for other people to judge. I mean, obviously, every photograph that I ever took during the Obama administration is now at the National Archives. And, in due time, they will all be made public. So I knew this day would come, and I thought it would just give people more information really about what it was like that day, at least the way I saw it through my eyes.